Good afternoon, live from ZTN studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Welcome to our virtual discussion this afternoon. ZIMCODD Public Finance Management Reform INDABA. $600 million for schools reopening budget. Is it enough? Is the nation prepared for schools reopening? Good afternoon, I'm your host Andy Hodges. This program is brought to you by ZimPaper's TV network ZTN in partnership with the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development, ZIMCODD. Now please feel free to share your comments and views via our Facebook page, ZimPaper's TV network, or via our Twitter handle @ZTN News. The Zimbabwean government recently announced the reopening of schools in phases this month as the country moves ahead with easing its COVID-19 restrictions. Making a televised announcement of the phased reopening of schools, Zimbabwe's Minister of Information, Minister Monica Mshwanga, said the school calendar for 2021 starts with the examination classes opening on March the 15th, of course that was 2 days ago, and the rest on March the 22nd, 2021. To discuss ZIMCODD Public Finance Management Reform INDABA, $600 million schools reopening budget, is it enough? Is the nation prepared for schools reopening? We are joined virtually this afternoon by Tarangana Ndoro. He's Director of Communications and Advocacy at Zimbabwe's Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. Dr. Sifiso Ndlovu, Chief Executive Officer at the Zimbabwe Teachers Association, ZIMTA. Raymond Majongwe, he's the Secretary General of the Progressive Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, PETAS. And Belinda Rupapa, who is a parent. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the program. Tarangana, let me start with you. Schools in Zimbabwe have been closed for almost a year now. What are the main reasons that the government decided that schools can reopen this month, March? I mean, what is different between now and, let me just pick a date, let's say November 2020. What's the difference between then and now that the government can say we can open schools safely? Tarangana, I think you have to unmute your microphone.
All right, thank you, Andy. The government opened, shut down the schools last year in March 2020 when there was an outbreak of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and our schools were shut down for about 6 months. We reopened in September 2020 and in a phased calendar, and we managed to close on the 18th of December 2020 without any incident of any of our learners dying from COVID. We then, as government, got direction from His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa, to prepare for reopening of schools in March this year, and we opened schools on Monday the 15th, and we are planning to that's Monday the 15th, it was for examination classes, and Monday the 22nd will be for the non-examination classes.
Thank you. Belinda, let me come to you. As a parent, do you think that the necessary protection is in place at schools to protect your child from possible COVID-19 infection? I mean, here I'm talking about things like sanitizers, constant disinfecting at schools, PPEs for staff members, social distancing, even the number of children per class. I mean, let me put it bluntly. Are you happy as a parent to send your child back to school?
Thank you, Andy. To be sincere with you, I am totally excited that come the 22nd March, my 2 children will be finally going back to school. I believe that the little that has been availed so far, it's necessary as a starting point for things to happen, for kids to start to continue with their education. Because if we continue saying that we are not ready, we will never be ready. This pandemic has been with us for close to a year now, so this is the time. The children should go back to school.
I hear you are very excited. I mean, the children have been with you, for almost a year in lockdown. It's time for them to get back on the path of education, Belinda.
Indeed.
I like that. Sifiso, look, you're the CEO of Zimbabwe's largest teachers union. So in your opinion, is Zimbabwe ready to fully reopen schools effectively on the 22nd of March 2021? Sifiso, I think you have to unmute your microphone, please.
Thank you very much, Andy. Come again with your question.
I said, you're the CEO of Zimbabwe's largest teachers union. In your opinion, is Zimbabwe ready to fully reopen schools effectively on the 22nd of March?
Fully, if we say fully ready to open the schools on the 22nd of March, we are suggesting that everything has been put in place. But what we know is that the mindset of the educators and the mindset of the learners is geared towards education. And in our consultation with the union members, we have found it very necessary to have the in-person learning to be resuscitated in our schools, despite the challenges that are still looming around us. So we are not fully ready, but we are partially ready to get to and work around COVID-19 challenges that we have as a country. So to answer you correctly, Andy, yes, we are in terms of our mindset to help the learners go back to school, and the learners are ready to come to school, and we want to believe we'll continue to put in strategies that will motivate both the learners and the teachers to remain in school in a safe environment.
Sibiso, let me just clear this up then. So as a union, you are stating for a fact that in all schools in the country, whether it be urban and rural schools, the government has put in place the necessary protective measures. I'm talking about PPE, sanitizers, etc. Are you conceding that that is in place?
Not necessarily that every school that is in place. We still have got some shortfalls in a number of rural schools. That is where I am saying we are not fully there. While we are prepared to be in the schools, there is an element of a lag between the supply of PPEs and also the presence of the educators in the schools. That is what we should be working around as a challenge to the distribution of PPEs. As I speak right now, those schools in the rural areas are still lagging behind in terms of PPEs because they have no resources, they need support from the state, and the state must come in handy. Hence, the 600 million that has been put, if we're clear and we know to what extent it has been employed to support the PPEs, then we'll be in a position to comment very fully to know whether we can cover around the needs that are already showing as we open schools, particularly as we opened for the examination classes last week.
Thank you. Raymond, let me ask you the same question. Do you believe that Zimbabwe is ready to open schools on the 22nd of March 2021? You have to unmute your microphone, please, Raymond. Raymond, can you please unmute your microphone? Sorry, Mr. Majongwe, can you please unmute your microphone? Oh, there you go. Thank you. Please continue.
Yes, I have unmuted it.
Thank you. Please go ahead, sir.
No, I'm saying the truth of the matter is we can't talk about opening or reopening of schools without addressing the needs and the challenges of teachers. Listening to the comrade parent who is speaking there, I think they are basically fascinated and excited and quite exuberant that their kids are going back to school. But who is going to be superintending over them? They are not worried about it. The welfare of the teacher is not important. And I want to believe that people must understand this. We are coming as citizens of this country who are offering a service. And we must say it without apology, that teachers are being given a raw deal. As long as their welfare is not addressed, fine, you can go and open school gates and school doors and open classrooms, but very little will happen. Because as far as we are concerned, we are sending a very clear position to say to President Mnangagwa, the issues of that teachers are raising are genuine and relevant. Teachers are wallowing in abject poverty. You can say everything you want. Schools can reopen, parents can be happy and celebrate to send their kids to school. But as long as the key ingredient of education is being shortchanged, we will not benefit much from it. Let us address the minimum demands that teachers are actually putting on the table. Respect the concerns of these teachers, and they are saying, we want to be of value to the nation. We are patriotic, we are loyal. Listen to the concerns that we have. What will it benefit for a teacher to go and teach your kids that you are celebrating, that you are sending, when theirs are at home languishing because they can't pay fees for the same schools? So these are the issues that the teachers are raising. Respect the value, respect their worth, pay them what they are due, and they will come and work extra hard.
Tangana, we will be talking about teachers' remuneration later on in the show, but I just wanted really to touch with you in terms of the safety protocols that are in place, because recent press statements have talked about schools meeting all the COVID-19 national protection protocols, as also as the WHO guidelines being met by most of them. Maybe just talk us through, because I think this is the concern of parents, that they send their children to school. Will their child be safe? Will they be protected? And will they not be exposed to the COVID-19?
Thank you, Andy. As enunciated by the World Health Organization and our national guidelines on COVID-19, as a matter of protocol, we have facilitated the purchase as government and the making of masks and sanitizers in schools. Some of our schools now have the capacity and are now well resourced in making face masks and sanitizers, and are even selling to other schools and other entities within the community. Government did supply local, not-for-profit mission schools, government schools, and council schools with PPEs last year. And as the ministry, we are still paying for those PPEs supplied and delivered in the previous year. Our assessment during our monitoring visits has shown us that these schools that have received the PPEs from government have not depleted the supplies that they were received from government last year, and they still have them. This is why we are saying we are prepared to open schools, and we're ready. Schools have already opened. In fact, on Monday we had the non-examination classes open, and on this coming Monday we're going to have all the other levels back in class, and the supplies for PPEs are there.
So, Tangana, you heard Dr. Sifiso Ndlovu there. He conceded that majority of schools did have the PPE, sanitizers, etc. However, not all schools, particularly those schools in the rural areas. So, I mean, can you confirm that, or even the timeline that you can say that most schools in the country, or all schools in the country, will be protected? Because it's not just urban here. We need to ensure that our children throughout the entire country are safe. So what are we doing about those schools that haven't got the supplies yet or are required to get them? Will they still open on the 22nd if they haven't received them?
I can assure you, Andy, that at the moment there is no school that has not opened for the examination classes. And on Monday, we expect that all schools are going to open, because it is now common cause that we, as a nation, are gripped with this COVID pandemic, and we know how to handle ourselves. When confronted with the COVID-19 pandemic, the learners are putting on masks, the teachers are also putting on masks. Our schools are ready. They've got sanitizers, they've got washing basins, they've got those chigubu gears at their schools. The PPEs are there. We have got social distancing markings. There is no person who is allowed at a school without, first of all, being screened. Every school has got a thermometer. I think we have done the best we can under the circumstances, under the environment of this COVID-19.
You're watching our virtual discussion this afternoon. ZIMCODD Public Finance Management Reform INDABA, $600 million schools reopening budget. Is it enough? Is the nation prepared for schools reopening? This broadcast is brought to you by ZimPaper's TV network, ZTN, and our partners, the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development, ZIMCODD. Belinda, we now want to touch on the thorny issue, if I can call it that, of teachers' remuneration, because you're aware that teachers, and you heard Raymond there, have been claiming incapacitation since last year. They believe the government should pay them appropriately, particularly back to the around $500 US that they were getting prior to the dollarization, so to speak. And some teachers have even claimed that they cannot even get to work as we speak now. On the other side, we have you as parents who are complaining about the increase in school fees, additional levies that schools are asking them to pay, and even the school uniforms prices have gone up significantly in the last year. So I'd like you to comment on this. Do you think that there's a compromise that can be found here? Because it would appear that the ones that may suffer the most could be our children. Belinda, you have to unmute your microphone, please.
Yes, Andy. We love our teachers, we have respect for them, because the best interests of our children, they depend on these same teachers. However, as a parent, I feel that the timing is just not favorable for now for our teachers to be making some of the demands that they are making. Our teachers, we implore them to understand that times are not normal. It's not business as usual. We are in a war-like situation. The same employer who is supposed to look after their needs also depends on the taxpayers' monies, but how much tax is being received by the government? The companies have been closed. No one is paying tax, adequate tax. So it's actually the timing. We're not saying that their demands are not legitimate. They are, but it's just the timing which I'm worried about.
Right.
And also remember that during the lockdown period, teachers are one of the very few employees who were receiving salaries whilst at home. Unlike most of the workers, they haven't been receiving anything. So we are humbly asking the teachers to try and make it work with the little that is available, because the future of our children depends on them.
Taungana, I will come to Sifiso and Raymond to respond to that, but Taungana, the government has publicly committed to maintain dialogue, to maintain open dialogue channels with the teachers' unions in order to resolve the issue of working conditions. Now, schools are reopening, of course, as we all know, next week. So what is the actual situation on the ground? Are the government and the unions talking? Are you making any progress?
Thank you, Andy. Before I can comment on that, I would like to commend what the parent is saying, because I think she's representing a lot of parents here. And even the teachers themselves, they're parents. And this is why we're having this discussion. And to come to your question, yes, indeed, government is meeting with the teachers and teachers' unions, and the negotiations are still going on. Our ministry, which is responsible for providing quality and wholesome education for all Zimbabweans, and is the user ministry of the teachers, is continuing to collaborate with our sister ministries who are responsible for the conditions of services of teachers, imploring them for an improvement of the conditions of service of teachers. And what we are saying as the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education is that whilst those negotiations are going on, we do expect that all teachers report for duty, and with commitment, we are all under the same boat, and we are trying to find a win-win situation. And I can guarantee you that their grievances are not falling on deaf ears. Us as the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, when we go around, we do sometimes see in certain schools that the conditions are probably not favorable for some of our teachers. So if that can also be improved, it would also assist in us fulfilling our mandate of providing quality and inclusive and equitable education for all Zimbabweans in the secondary and primary and non-formal sector.
Sifiso, you heard there Taungana, he's saying that your pleas or your demands for better conditions, working conditions, are not falling on deaf ears. But I also want to state what Belinda said. She said that she believes as a parent it's not a favorable time for unions to be asking for this. She's called this a war situation, and the fact that the demands, yes, she conceded that the demands are justifiable, but it's not the right time for it. And she also stated that she believes that teachers were still receiving salaries during the lockdown. Now, there have been reports, Sifiso, that unions were calling, at least 2 weeks ago, were calling for their teachers to go on a go slow. So I'd like to ask you, is this true? Because reports are indicating that teachers are reporting for duty, particularly now during the exam opening. So have you asked your members to go on a go slow? What is the situation on the ground?
Let me categorically say to you, Andy, the position of Zimbabwe Teachers Association has been very clear. We have called on our members to take up the issue of service delivery from the issue of salaries. These are two parallel and linear processes which must be tackled together. But at the same time, we must take the negotiating platform in the public service, labor, and social welfare platform to address the welfare issues of educators. This has been an ongoing exercise. Unfortunately, it is lacking the good faith and goodwill from both parties. So there is a time when there is a promise and the promise is reneged on. This is where the confidence of the educators becomes slim in tolerating the employer ministry, who must facilitate the service ministry, which is the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education.
Sorry, Sifiso, sorry to interrupt you, mate. Sorry, can I ask my other guest to please mute your microphone, because as you know on Zoom it will come to you. So please mute your microphone so Sifiso has a chance. Sifiso, please continue. Dr. Ndlovu, please continue.
Yes. So I was saying now, as we got, thank you. I was saying we are decoupling these two issues, the issue of the salary and the issue of service delivery. Not that we are relegating the issue of the welfare of educators. This has been on our agenda and campusing every day, every night, and asked for the resuscitation of the dialogue process. It is only at the faltering on the other party where we come to the table and it does not own up to the promises that it has made. For example, the current squabble is as a result of the failed realization of the promise of the roadmap towards the $540 United States equivalent salary. This has not materialized. It is therefore bringing out these consternations, and that is what we are seeking to address. But we've called on our educators to say if they receive their salaries, they must go back to the children, educate their children in utmost good faith and trust, and deliver lessons so that our children can remain competitive. Besides, when we come back to teach them, we will find them in the same space or in the same state that we left them. It will still be our work. So that is the encouragement that we have made to our members. And we continue to make them and encourage them, but give the organization ZIMCODD the opportunity to use its institutional power to approach all the offices of the land to address the issue of the salaries while we are educating the children.
So you're saying, and let me just make this clear then. You're saying on the 22nd of March, your members of ZIMCODD will be reporting for duty. However, of course, the dialogue process in terms of the packages and salaries and working conditions will be continuing. However, parents can be assured that when they take their children to class, your members at least will be in the class teaching them. Is that correct? Tifiso?
Correct, Andy. We are encouraging our members to do that.
Thank you.
And we stand by that, and that is the strong belief and philosophy that we will achieve results of the salaries in as much as we did last year. We have the institutional capacity to bring the food to the table of our educators, and we will stick to that.
Thank you. Raymond, I'd like you to comment, because there's one thing that Belinda said as a parent. She said, of course, that it's not a favorable time for teachers to be raising such demands. As I quoted her, she said, we're in a bit of a war. We're just getting back, our children are getting back educated. And of course, there were reports of your own union president saying that schools were not ready for reopening, as well as reports about unions asking teachers to go slow. So your comments on this, have you asked your teachers to go slow? Will your union members, also like ZIMCODD's members, be at classes on the 22nd of March?
I think, with all due respect, what I actually observed here is that parent or that person masquerading as a parent is there pretending to be representing parents when she is there to represent a particular interest. It is not a business to come and tell us how teachers must behave. Teachers are adults, and during the war, people don't starve, people eat. Parents are there to defend the interests of their children. Don't step on the toes of the civil servants who are employees of the government. All we are saying here is, with due respect, even in most situations, conditions don't get violated willy-nilly. Teachers are simply saying they are earning a salary which is far less than what other government employees are earning. And we want a logical reason for that particular arrangement. Mr. Ndorode will say a lot, but the question will still remain. When these teachers are disarticulated and not properly paid, we will not be able to give proper service. People will be 100% present and 100% absent psychologically to be of impact and of influence to the children whose future we want to mold. The truth of the matter is, and if you look at what is happening on the ground, teachers are not making preposterous demands. As of now, the PTUZ demand was, pay us the 30,000 that every other civil servant is earning. Then we will be back at work and we will be offering the quality service that we know. Then thereafter we start negotiating. Not when some of our peers are earning 30,000 and teachers are earning 15,000. Then you expect us to smile back to work. We will be naive and fools. Let government be responsible. We are citizens of this country. We love our country and we are patriotic. Pay us what we are worth and we'll go to class and do what we are supposed to be doing. Give teachers 30,000 tomorrow and I assure you on the 22nd we will be there. And why we are accepting the 30,000 is purely because that is what everybody else is earning. The moment you discriminate against us, people are going to be making these demands that they are making.
So Raymond, are you saying then? Are you saying that? So are you saying that your members on the 22nd may not appear for work? Is that what you're saying, Peters? What are you actually saying?
I didn't hear you well.
Are you saying that your members, your teachers under your union may not come to work on the 22nd of March? Is that what you're actually saying?
The most important point here is there is a Federation of Educators called for ZEU. They did a circular last week, and I think Mr. Ndoro has a copy of that one. We put down our few demands, part of which include reviewing the salaries, part of which, and we are not asking for too much. We are simply saying to government, pay us what everybody else is earning. Then we will come back and make sure we negotiate thereafter. Why do you want teachers to go and work when they're earning 17,000? When those that they were at par with last year are now earning 30,000. Where did these negotiations happen that improved the salaries for every other ministry and left teachers? And why are teachers having faith in negotiations that don't improve their salaries? All we are saying, with due respect, President Mnangagwa, we are begging, or we are on our knees, we are patriotic, we are loyal, improve the salaries of the teachers to where everybody else is, and things will normalize. Put us where everybody else is, and we will go to work and then we negotiate from there. Why should we be negotiating to catch others that we were within the same boat last year? Last year we were earning some salaries. Now they are earning almost 15,000 more than us. What is the legitimate and legal justification for that particular discrimination?
I will remind our guests, of course, that here at ZTN, all views are welcome, irrespective of whether you agree with them or not. And in fact, our motto at ZTN is dignity, dialogue, and respect. You are watching our virtual discussion this afternoon. ZIMCODD Public Finance Management Reform INDABA, $600 million schools reopening budget. Is it enough? Is the nation prepared for schools reopening? Raymond, let me come back to you. I want to get back to the theme of our show this afternoon, of course, and that's the issue of the 600 million Zimbabwe dollars schools reopening budget. Is it enough? Is the nation prepared for schools reopen? Is the amount budgeted for enough? What would you recommend that government needs to do? Because obviously there isn't an unlimited amount of money that can be spent on schools reopening due to the fiscal space that's currently in Zimbabwe. So what do you think? $600 million, Raymond?
I think I have a problem with that 600 million. The last time we engaged, we were told of the 600 million. And the 600 million, we don't know where it was distributed, how it was supposed to be used, in what form was it? Was it in PPEs? Was it in sanitizers? How was it quantified? And now the same bullet 600 million comes about. What is the magical thing about this 600 million? Where is it coming from? And how do we track it? Assume today I want to move with Sifiso to say we want to track the 600 million. Where do we track it? I am told by headmasters out there, they can't afford PPEs. Contrary to what some people have said on this program, I know of schools where there are kids with no masks, where there is no water. There is no running water. Even here in Harare, let's go to Maputo Fara, let's go to Alan Wilson, let's go to Chitunguza, let's go to Mfakos, and show me a school that is running water. So why are we lying to the nation? These are the questions that we are putting across. Go to schools in Mwenezi, go to Binga. Where is the water coming from? Are we saying the water that God is throwing onto earth is the water that we are referring to? We are talking of water that can be used by people to wash their hands, to remain clean, ablution facilities. All these things are not there on the ground. All we are saying is because schools have to reopen, teachers must run back to work, and everything must normalize. Let's go back and tell the truth. The real tragedy in this country, and if I'm going to tell you, is people believe that we must lie to the president. I have made a vow with my God. I will not lie to my leadership. I am saying to President Mnangagwa and to the Minister of Education, things are not well. Talk to the teacher unions. I will ask Mr. Ndoro in your presence, and when last did the Minister of Education engage the teacher unions? When last did we sit down to discuss even the figure of 600 million? I'm hearing these things from here on this program, but I'm the Secretary General of the second largest teacher union, and I know nothing about all these things.
Sifiso, before I get to Tangana to get his response, let me ask you, $600 million schools reopening budget, is that funding enough? I mean, we heard reports, of course, that the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education stated that 3,000 more schools needed to be built. Let's not just talk about the infrastructure, such as putting in running water, possibly electricity, even things like computerization, just the implements to educate children. $600 million, Sifiso, what is your comment on that?
I said it at the beginning of the show that this money is not enough. It's just a pittance to education. If we are going to support education, even in normal circumstances, West now, when you are talking about supporting the pandemic, supporting the reopening of schools under the pandemic. So it's not enough. But let us learn, what is it going to be used for? How was it bidded? What was it allocated for? Because as I stand here, I think we missed an opportunity last week to interact with the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, which had called a meeting. We were going to ask them about this issue of how are we going to support the funding of our education. I know that the funding of the education under pandemic is coming from various well-wishers, parents included, including the parent who is here. They are contributing a lot of money to the schools through the SDCs. But let us also know how much money is now aggregated in that various form, supporting the efforts of the pandemic. So as I stand now, I'm not confident that this money will be enough, let alone to talk about construction of schools. Yes, to support this, the acquisition of PPEs and many other small items, it will go a long way. And also to support the issue of e-learning. It may assist, because under the pandemic conditions now, we are going to be seeing a blended approach to teaching, and it must be supported. And that fund can be used in that area. I'm only suggesting now, because I did not have the platform to interrogate what this money was going to be used for. Hopefully, in the Mr. Ndoro, who's here, will shed some bit of light as to what was that money bidded for and how much was bidded, because that seems to have been come from Treasury as far as last week, but not really something that has always been on the cards. Let us learn from the ministry what they bidded for and what that money is going to be employed to do. As unions, we don't know what it's going to do.
Sifiso, let me ask you, because, and I will ask Tangana this when I get to him, but Raymond asked the question, when last did your union actually sit and discuss with the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education? What was the last date that you actually sat down and had any kind of conversation or even discussed anything about funding in terms of reopening of schools?
The good thing with the ZIMCODD is that it creates the dialogue. It creates dialogue every day. So when we see there's a lull and there's no invitation, we probe, we write, we phone, we talk. But these are the issues that we talk, and we call it bilateral discussions. And bilateral discussions are meant to fill in the interstices of information that may be lacking in one or two areas. That's why I'm saying last week we missed an opportunity, was with an invitation. Unfortunately, we couldn't form a quorum, and I think that meeting was abandoned. It was supposed to be happening last week. So as late as last week, we were supposed to meet the ministry. Something happened, I don't know what happened, to knock and get an answer from regarding issues that are pertinent to us. What we missed was this opportunity to talk about the 600 million, how it was going to be employed. That's why I'm only asking you now.
Tangana, I think there's the question. Two issues. One, of course, Raymond posed you a question. As PETA is the second largest teachers union in Zimbabwe, he says that they haven't met with you in the recent past. But also as well, let's talk about the 600 million. Can you tell us exactly what that 600 million was eared for? I mean, is it all going towards PPEs, to protection? What is it for in actuality?
The 600 million, Andy, was disbursed last year through our Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. And it went towards the procurement of PPEs. PPEs include the procurement of masks, the payment to schools and universities that were producing masks for other schools, the procurement of wash materials. We're talking about water, sanitation, and hygiene materials. That's where the money did go, and it will obviously be available for everyone to see how that money was utilized through an audit process. We have an auditor general who will definitely all go through our audit process, and we will all be privy to how that 600 million for PPEs was used. We are actually at this moment now worried about certain claims that there are students or learners who do not have masks. I mean, the wearing of masks, for instance, is by law. Everybody has to put on a mask. It's like saying there are people or citizens in the city of Bluewayo or Mtare walking around without masks. And I think that is taking the assumption or the presumption too far. The learners have got the masks. Our schools have got the water. Where there was no water, government through its sister ministries and the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, through also its sister ministries, the Ministry of Public Works, the Ministry of Lands, ZINWA, Zinara, DDF. We drilled boreholes, and we also rehabilitated a number of boreholes and made sure that there's enough and adequate water provision for sanitation. We've also been blessed that the rains came in abundance this season, and most of our rural schools initiated water harvesting. So water really is not a problem in the whole nation of Zimbabwe at the moment. If there's anyone in Zimbabwe who's saying that I've got a dry well, I think that person would be misrepresenting the situation on the ground, or perhaps not even living in this beautiful country of milk and honey called Zimbabwe.
But Tangana, 600 million, you said it was dispersed last year, and you did say, of course, that some schools had not finished their supplies, for example, of sanitizers and so forth. But we still have, what, 7-8 months of the year to go. Are you looking at a more budget coming in? Is the Treasury promised to schools more budget, particularly in terms of maintaining infrastructure and also purchasing additional PPEs as the year progresses? And we haven't even started, for example, to talk about money that may be spent or needed for the free vaccination program once a vaccine is found that can vaccinate children. So what is going to happen going forward in terms of financing for schools?
Financing for schools in terms of PPEs, obviously, we will have to assess the situation. We assess the situation if there is a need. Remember last year, when the year began, there was the threat of COVID seemed like it was not really an African problem, let alone a Zimbabwean problem. When we realized that the COVID pandemic had actually hit home, this is when we then approached the Treasury, and Treasury managed to disburse the 600 million. we're still assessing the situation in 2021, and we are very confident that Treasury would avail the funds for if there is need. But what we have seen on the ground, like I've said, the PPEs that were purchased using the funds availed by the Ministry of Finance in the previous year, the PPEs are still within some of those schools. They have not yet been depleted. So we cannot keep on saying this is now supposed to be an overhead cost to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. Remember, there are other concerns and there are other priorities and other issues. You have here teachers unions saying we need more salaries. We have to be considerate. Are we going to take the money that could have been given to teachers to increase their salaries to purchase PPEs, or we are going to assess the situation and see where there is great need? I think the Ministry of Finance has been doing a very good job in funding us. And right now, we now expect that our schools and school authorities, including our parents and guardians, also support government's efforts in the provision of PPEs. We are looking at schools that have got a very robust alumni to come in and say, look, I went to Kutama College, I'm going back to Kutama, and I'm a businessman now. This is the school that made me who I am. I'm going to supply PPEs worth $10,000. So it's an all hands on deck. It's a national duty now for us to be supplying PPEs to all the schools.
We are coming to the end. Thank you. We are coming to the end of our show, but I'd like to ask Belinda this. Belinda, first, let me say that your views are important to us here at ZTN, and so please keep on making them. Now, your final comment, Belinda. What advice would you give to both unions and the government going forward? Because we are talking about what I would probably term one of the most important things that any Zimbabwean has, and that's children. Belinda? Okay, well, it appears that Belinda's gone. So let me use up the time. Sifiso and Raymond, I can give you a minute each just for your final thoughts. Schools are opening next week. Are you ready? Are we prepared? Are educators back on track? Will our kids be taught at last? It's been a year and we've suffered with them at home. So let me start with you, Sifiso, if I can give you 1 minute for your brief summing up.
But in a spirit of utmost good faith, in a spirit of uberima fide, we are going to be delivering our lessons to our children. And we are saying to the employer, meet the end of your bargain. By the end of March, we should have the issues of the salaries for educators rectified. That is paramount. That is important to maintain high motivation for the educators and the support personnel in education.
Thank you. Thanks, Sifiso. Apologies. I have to jump in there. Raymond, I literally can give you 30 seconds. Just your final summation, please. Raymond? Oh, well, unfortunately, we may have lost him as well.
I would say to government,
please go ahead.
It's important that government addresses the concerns of teachers. Teacher welfare is a critical and cardinal point that will see normalcy returning. Without giving teachers what they are worth, normalcy will remain a pipe dream. Pay teachers like the demand that we have come up with. Give us what others are earning. Then we'll start negotiating from there. If you really expect teachers to go back to work when they're earning half of what the other peers are earning, I think it is an insult to us. Okay. Let this Second Republic lead responsibly. Pay teachers well, and we will deliver and make sure that our mandate is delivered. I think on that
note, unfortunately, so apologies, Raymond, I have to cut you off there. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our program this afternoon. You've been watching our virtual discussion, ZIMCODD Public Finance Management Reform in INDABA, $600 million schools reopening budget. Is it enough? Is the nation prepared for schools reopening? This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Paper's TV network, ZTN, and our partners, the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development, ZIMCODD. I'd like to thank our guest, Taungana Ndoro. He's Director of Communications and Advocacy at Zimbabwe's Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. Dr. Sifiso Ndlovu, Chief Executive Officer, Zimbabwe Teachers Association, ZIMTA. Raymond Majongwe, Secretary General of the Progressive Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, PETAS. And Belinda Rupapa, who was a parent. Thank you so much for appearing on the program this afternoon on a very important topic. A final comment. Globally, countries have started to slowly emerge from lockdown restrictions imposed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has spread throughout the globe with 117 million cases, 66.4 million recovered, and 2.6 million tragically deaths. So far, data suggests that children under the age of 18 years represent about 8.5% of reported cases, with relatively few deaths compared to other age groups and usually mild disease symptoms. The competing demands of safety from infection, general well-being and education must be thoroughly considered and balanced in a pandemic school environment. Most countries have had to make school reopening decisions based on whether the risks of infection to children, staff and families outweigh the harms of closure to children's education and social development, and if these risks have been attended to. The government of Zimbabwe, you have heard in this program today, has made some important strides in ensuring schools are safe for learners and teachers. However, these efforts may be hampered by limited coverage and underfunding. The need for investment in schools to protect learners, teachers and their families cannot be overemphasized. And let me not even mention the teachers and educationalists who have been claiming incapacitation since last year. And in fact, the unions today have spoken about the need to address the working conditions of teachers. We need our schools open. We need our teachers happy. We need our school infrastructure rehabilitated. We need to go back to normal as soon as possible. We need so much, yet we all know we will not get it all. The emergence of entrenched positions from all sides is not good for the nation, and in fact our children. Something must give. $600 million budgeted for schools reopening sounds like a lot, but bearing in mind the state of our school infrastructure, the need to buy PPEs for staff safety, as well as funding to keep our children safe, it may be just a drop in the ocean to what is actually required. I'm Andy Hodges. That's it for me this afternoon. Goodbye, and you all be safe.